on our Lewis Automotive Group hotline right now. Bret Dolan, play-by-play Touchdown Radio, Razorback Sports, perfect game, works at MLB. Usually where in the world is Bret Dolan, but we know where he is today because there's Arkansas Little Rock women's basketball at Bud Walton Arena. And Bret, I'm just assuming you're on the call.
I am. Game 2 of 3 this week, so it's a busy one, as you well know.
What are the chances I can get you to switch seats with me? Just for this game. We don't have to do it for any other. But just get me courtside for one game. You can sit about 10 rows back. Are you all right with that?
Let's do it. I mean, I'll put you with Coach Z. You know that's an experience, so let's make that work.
That sounds good. I'm solo tonight. You all right doing a solo radio telecast of some sort?
Sure. Now you're throwing in the extra aspects. All right, why not? We'll do it.
They don't pay you any extra if you don't have a color analyst with you either. I'll just tell you that for sure. So you're done with Touchdown Radio until the Texas Bowl, correct?
That is correct.
All right. You had Ohio State and UCLA last week. Man, Ohio State's just rolling roughshod over everybody. Tell us what you saw last week at the Horseshoe.
You know, it's interesting because Nico Iamaleava was ruled out because of a concussion on Friday night, and he was the guy that we had in the big upset of UCLA over Penn State when he had 5 touchdowns, and we were hopeful that he would have some type of theatrics to make this game close, and he didn't play, and it was not close. Ohio State is a machine, and I was anxious to see them and have been for a few weeks just to kind of compare them to some of the other teams, especially Georgia that I had a couple of times this season. But the talent level is pretty amazing, but how Ryan Day gets those 4 and 5 stars to kind of play a role, so to speak, and maybe split some minutes or reps, pretty impressive. And I know it's almost a completely different defense than they had a year ago, but it might even be better. So it's going to be a fun team to watch.
Brett, I love college football. I love the theatrics. I love everything about it. Last week, Oklahoma played. They don't play their best game, but they kind of, I don't know if you want to say Alabama gave it away, but hey, Oklahoma did enough to win. Oklahoma has Missouri this week. Could you see a little letdown, or do you think Oklahoma's past the hump and they'll be all right?
I kind of think they're past the hump only because Mizzou's had some issues, as we've talked about, with quarterbacking. I think what's unique, Matt, in that game, and I think how you explained it's a good way, because the total yards was somewhere in the area of, 230-ish for Oklahoma off the top of my head. And you would probably think that number's not anywhere close to being able to have a chance to go in and beat Alabama. But when you have a good defense, you make some plays, you make some big efforts both defensively and offensively, you can win games. And it's been the formula that they have operated on. And I think when you get caught up in the numbers, you tend to look past them a bit. But when you look at the overall body of work, they just kind of keep finding ways to get the job done.
And then another one, I think it's the biggest game of the week. USC got past your Iowa Hawkeyes last week, and now they take on an Oregon team where if USC beats Oregon, I think they're in. They could cause a little shakeup in the playoff 12. Do they have a chance? They got to go to Eugene. How do you kind of see that game unfolding?
I think they've got a chance. I mean, they were down 21-7 last week, 14-0 at USC, and came back to win. Now, the odds makers seem to believe it's a prohibitive Oregon favorite. I think it's a double-digit line right now. The problem with Oregon is they haven't had overwhelming wins, so I think we're still a little bit curious what they look like. They lost, obviously, at home to Indiana. Their win at Penn State does not carry as much weight anymore, at least I think for some. USC has an incredible wide receiver, a very good quarterback, and the running game isn't bad. I do think they've got a chance. USC did not play well at home the last couple of weeks as far as maybe just finding ways to win by 15 or 20 points. I think they can keep it fairly close. I still think Oregon's probably got a little better talent, but the Ducks need some healthy receivers and skill players. They've been a little bit lean, where USC has been pretty good.
A couple of days ago, Bill King prognosticated a Ohio State-Georgia national championship game. You've seen both of these teams up close. Are they the best 2 teams in the country right now?
Best 2 teams I've seen, and I probably wouldn't argue if you wanted to say that. And I think for similar reasons. In this era of the portal, we talk about going out every year and adding to your roster or flushing it and bringing in talented players and older players. What these 2 teams do and these 2 programs is they still get the best 4- and 5-star players in the country for the most part. I mean, they're part of probably 2 or 5 or 2 of 6 teams that can do that. So these kids are good enough to get on the field when they're freshmen and sophomores. They can develop them. They can still get in the portal and add when they need to. I think they've been able to kind of have a formula that worked before the chaos, and it still continues to work after. And there's no shortage of dollars for either to be able to retain or augment talent when they need to do so. But I think the skill players for Georgia have been pretty good. I think the skill players for Ohio State are a little bit better. But I think the one thing that they both do is convince players to, maybe play 30 reps instead of 50 or 60 and to kind of share a little bit of the wealth of opportunity when it comes to being on the field. But for me, I think they are clearly the two best teams I've seen in person.
Hey, what's your initial reaction or your gut feeling? I think Lane Kiffin would be a perfect coach at LSU. Do you think he stays at Ole Miss? Do you think he's just trying to get more money out of? I mean, I kind of, the longer it goes, I kind of think he's going to go to LSU. How do you kind of see that right now?
I was chatting with a few people that are at least in the orbit of Lane this week, Matt, and I think I was with you. I kind of expected him to stay. I think he's got a pretty good situation. Obviously, the tough part is if you leave, you might have to kind of almost jump ship on your current team at some point in the postseason, which is really hard to do. I do feel like the longer this lingers, at least there has to be some interest. And, Lane's making enough money. I don't know if it's that. Maybe he's trying to get a few more millions into his pool of available money to pay and retain players himself going forward. I'm curious, though, again, because I think we're getting to that point, whether there's an ultimatum or not. I think Ole Miss really would like an answer or would like some direction on where their program is going. To me, with the chaos surrounding LSU and the governor and the athletic directors and whatnot, that would be a big enough red flag for me to stay at Ole Miss. And I don't know if Florida or LSU, at least right now, is a better job. Maybe it would be in 2 or 3 years. But I still think he's going to stay. But I'm a little more curious than I was, say, a month ago.
Drinkowicz, I think he goes. Do you think he's a better fit at Florida or Penn State?
Well, I would probably say Florida because he's been in this league now a couple of years, and I think what he did at Mizzou is pretty impressive. I don't think that's an easy place to be able to put up 9, 10-ish wins. I really would have loved to have seen what would have happened this year had Purdue not been hurt, or even their quarterback that got hurt in week 1 who was going to split some of the reps. I think Eli is probably deserving of an opportunity. I always find it a little bit tough to jump within a league, whether that would be Lane or Eli, to go within the same conference, but it's not as unheard of as it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. So I think he would probably take an opportunity because I do think there is a decided difference between the programs of Florida or LSU than there is Mizzou, where I don't know if there's that big of a difference between, say, Ole Miss and LSU right now.
All right, Bret Dolan has called about 2 handfuls of college football games. That includes 1 Arkansas game. We are going to introduce the inaugural Bret Dolan Football Awards just for teams that you've seen and called, all right? That's all it is. Best player you've seen this year.
Jeremiah Smith, and I only got to see him for half last week. He's a man among boys as a sophomore wide receiver for Ohio State. I think he was last year. It's crazy to think he'll have to come back one more year and play for Ohio State. He made it a one-handed catch in the first drive last week where it was like I was throwing you a grapefruit or an orange, and you just reached out and speared it, no problem. Physically incredibly gifted. I think he's probably the best. Gunnar Stockton and Julian Sain have been really good when I've seen them. But I think when you project not just college but NFL, I think Smith is probably the most exciting.
All right, look on the other side of the ball. Who's the best defensive player you've seen?
I really like C.J. Allen with Georgia, but Caleb Downs, and again, I don't think I saw him at full go last week. The safety for Ohio State, the man who transferred from Alabama. I think it was the first or second play of the game. There was a screen pass, and he made a tackle for a 3-yard loss. And I'm like, that is the safety. He came up and made a tackle for a 3-yard loss, and he started 15 yards off the line of scrimmage. I know that he's highly thought of. I don't think either one of those guys are unknowns to the NFL. I think both would be incredibly high picks if they were both available to go this year. But sometimes when you see athleticism that pops on teams that are full of athleticism, it does at least get my attention.
Okay, now tell us the stadiums you've called games in and what's been the best crowd.
Ooh. The funny thing is Auburn, for some of the big games, is always a different level of outdoor nightclub, and we had the Georgia game, and that was at night. We had Ole Miss for LSU, which was pretty darn good. I felt like Ohio State was as loud as I've heard them, and that was for a nothing game last week against UCLA. So, Auburn to me is always the loudest, and it might be because they have the loudest speakers. But Ohio State was pretty good, even for a night game against a team that they were going to pummel. That was pretty impressive.
Okay, last thing, and it'll be the next football game you got. Texas Bowl. I don't remember the date, but it's usually what? New Year's Eve? We need to know who you think you're going to be watching in the Texas Bowl. Everybody needs to know prognostications on the 6-6 bowl game.
Oh, boy. And, when I look at these projections on a regular basis, and I have it in the last 4 or 5 days with all these darn basketball games we are getting. I hope that, last year we had Baylor and LSU, which was kind of fun, a Big 12 SEC matchup. Usually that fits. I really don't want to see a 6-ish win, a team like TCU or others. I'm hoping we can get a little higher tier, but the way LSU is trending, that might be a team we get again. I hope not, but I wish I had a better guess for you right now. Give me one more week, Phil. I think we'll have a pretty good idea, but I would imagine it'll be a 7 or 8 win Big 12 SEC type matchup.
You don't always win your first bet. That's why MyBookie has you covered. Use our code HOGS, H-O-G-S, and your first bet up to $500 is fully covered. If your pick doesn't hit, you get it right back with our Bet Back bonus. Go to MyBookie.ag and use the code HOGS to claim your Bet Back bonus. MyBookie's where bettors win together because bragging's good, but cashing in is better. And your first bet is fully covered. Use our code HOGS.
Must opt in during the bet to use the Bet Back bonus.